The Scooby-Doo show is where the delivery methods start getting a little bit confusing. Today we'll just be talking about Season 1, although we'll touch on the other seasons. It first aired as half of the Scooby-Doo/Dynamite Hour, and it's back to standard formula after the deviation of the new movies. This means 22-minute episodes, simple mysteries driven by capitalism, and a variety of wild disguises. It was first released in 1976 and was fairly successful, albeit slightly lower rated than the original Where Are You series. It maintained almost all the cast, except Velma's voice actress, who had married and retired from show business. Scooby-Dum is a new character, a braver cousin of Scooby-Doo, but despite being featured prominently in the opening credits, he's only in 4 episodes total, 2 in Season 1 and 2 in Season 2. This series is definitely a follow-up to Where Are You, but due to that, it doesn't have much identity of its own. It lacks the musical chase sequences from Season 2, and while the animation quality is better than the new movies, there are still errors in almost every single episode, some more noticeable than others. The best feature is definitely the variety of locations. I'll bring up the map to demonstrate. This series focuses on showcasing specific places instead of generic castles or islands. Examples include Washington, D.C., Seattle, New York, Niagara Falls, and Mexico. While not every episode capitalizes on these more exotic locales, most of them do, which makes them blur together less. In terms of monster design, there are a few classics that have seen interpretations in other media, like the 10,000-volt ghost or the gator ghoul, but there are also a few completely reused ones. While in some cases, like the Seattle Underground, these are a bit of cheeky fan service, others are just plain laziness. Now on to the individual episodes. The first features the gang getting a job on a construction site, while avoiding a Count Chocula-look inspector, with an accompanying witch. It's a solid introduction with some interesting visuals where Shaggy and Scooby get transformed into monsters. Something becomes somewhat of a recurring theme. The world is also made to feel more alive, with a decent number of background characters, avoiding the emptiness that some of the other series have had. Next is Scooby-Doo's first Mexican adventure, though not the last. They encounter an Aztec ghost, and it's relatively inoffensive, at least as far as 70s cartoons go. It's a decent romp, but aside from the location, there's nothing terribly special about it. Although some of the backgrounds in the pyramids are relatively visually interesting. The gruesome game of the Gator Ghoul is next, and features Scooby-Dum's first appearance. It uses its swamp location well, and has the fairly interesting twist that the boat they're on is a factory for making fritters, and soda or something. Most of Dum's appearances are solid, as he offers something unique without taking over the show, unlike some other doos in the future. The 10,000-watt ghost is next, and he's featured in snowy terrain, which are always my favorite kind of episodes. It also has some of the more impressive visuals for the show, when the ghost destroys the power lines. There are also some fun animal bits, as a pet shop is a featured location in the mystery, which again allows for greater visual variety, as well as different types of humor. This is the best episode of the season, although not by a huge margin. Next is a Halloween episode, featuring the Headless Horseman. This one is Scooby-Dum again, as well as a variety of costumes for the gang. There are a good variety of locations, traveling from a creepy manor house to a graveyard to an airport. Interestingly enough, this is the second adaptation of the Sleepy Hollow story for Scooby-Doo, as the creepy Fog of Junebury had a similar villain. The Headless Horseman is also featured in Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King, as well as many others. It's one of a few themes that they just keep returning to. Next we have something that's sort of a reference to the first ever episode, with the Black Knight as one of the featured monsters, as well as a wizard who bears an uncanny resemblance to the Dungeon Master. This episode also features evil Shaggy and Scooby through hypnotism, although it doesn't last that long. The premise is kind of funny though, that Shaggy's relative literally bought over Camelot brick by brick and rebuilt it in America because of valid reasons. Also another plot similarity to the Goblin King, with Shaggy ruining a magician's show, and then he becomes a villain. I'm starting to think that Scooby-Doo is just reused ideas from other Scooby-Doo things. The Harem Scarum Sanitarium features Dr. Satan doing some crazy things, which turns out to be an excuse to hide gold, just like it almost always is. But at least he's got a good look to him. This episode is set at Niagara Falls, and gets a bit of the atmosphere, but there's a big miss in terms of realism, as in real life both sides of the border feature decent-sized cities, whereas here it's just empty land. Next we've got the case of the No-Face Zombie, although he's not No-Face that I'm familiar with. The design is kind of interesting, and there's some fun bits in a toy factory where most of the episode takes place. It's definitely a bit low energy though compared to the rest of the season, but at least it is Boxing Kangaroo. This is followed up by a classic voodoo episode set somewhere in Louisiana. This one has the most egregious case of disguise reuse since the pirates in the new movies. This time the zombie has a pink shirt instead of a green one. I guess they could have been inspired by the previous exploits and created an homage if you're looking for an in-universe reason, but that's quite a stretch. Like most episodes this season, this is a 2-location episode, starting in a generic creepy house and moving on to a swamp/ritual site. This episode's inciting incident is the gang's friend getting kidnapped and later hypnotized, which adds a bit of tension and urgency to this story, and it makes it more effective than most. Them being in a band also harkens back to the original idea for the Scooby-Doo show, as well as having some much appreciated cheesy 70s music, making the episode overall very solid. The next episode is explicitly set in Seattle, using landmarks like the Space Needle, cable cars, and the underground city as primary locations. The whole area is woefully underused in media in general, with Malignant as one of the few recent examples, but the fact that there is a real undercity in Seattle and Chicago is incredibly cool. The monster this time is a cadre of demons, as well as a number of references to monsters past in the museum, which is the kind of reuse I can appreciate. After that is a bum steer for Scooby, and it's a desert episode with a giant ghost bull, but honestly, this one's not very impressive. Desert episodes in general are not great, and this is no exception. The best part is the use of the cave dwellings, but even those become kind of monotonous, as they're running around identical square rooms for 5 minutes. One of the worst in this season for sure. The Demon Shark episode is next, and it's ridiculous in all the right kind of ways. I mean, it's a demon shark, running around, but also swimming. It's a literal jump the shark moment, albeit about a year before Happy Days did it. After Jaws, I suppose it was inevitable. While water is a major feature in the episode, this is not a scuba diving episode like some earlier in the series, which is for the best as it allows for more variety in locations. The next one, on the other hand, is super underwater, and the worse for it. The best part is definitely the monster's design, specifically Old Tentacle Head. The only other notable thing about the episode is the complete absence of the Mystery Machine, as the gang is aboard the ship the entire time. Even when they visited Hawaii, they brought the van along, but I guess there just wasn't space on the boat. Just like all anime have a baseball episode, all American cartoons will inevitably have a football episode, so here's Scooby-Doo's. It's a fun romp, with a fairly unique design for the zombie player. There's also a long section where he's just chilling, writing a letter to the editor or something. There's nothing funnier than the people in ridiculous monster costumes going about their daily business. Next we have Ice Cream Ghosts. Need I say more? Well, maybe a little bit. They're Neapolitan ghosts, with identical designs to the classic green one, but in different colors. Although Shaggy does don one of their robes for an extended period of time, so at least that's new. It's definitely a typical factory episode, one of the few broad categories of mysteries, and a fairly common one throughout the series. It joins the spooky house, underwater, and ghost town archetypes. The finale of the first season is a historical episode, featuring the ghosts of Benedict Arnold, Jean Andre, and William Dumont, all set in scenic Washington, D.C. This one has some good atmosphere, beginning with a dark and stormy night, and traveling through various landmarks in the capital city. They also note that it's the bicentennial celebration, establishing at least this series is taking place in 1976, which is very important to the greater timeline and lore. So after taking a look at the individual episodes, we can see that overall they don't stand out hugely. It's not that the series is bad, it's fairly good Scooby-Doo content, with sufficiently entertaining mysteries and a good selection of disguises, nice location variety, and a few more unique features like Scooby-Dum, but it lacks something to really make it stand out. Putting it on the tier list, it's a solid B. As I rank more media, this may drop down, but for now it's above average, which is good enough for me. We'll see if Season 2 improves the formula, or if it's just more of the same. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Be well.